I've talked about a lot of good isekai, however there are just as many good as there are bad. So here's a list of 3 isekai I don't recommend to anyone. At number 3 we have Fruit of Evolution. Just like most isekai, this show starts with the protagonist being summoned, however in this case his whole class gets summoned to a fantasy world. While the protagonist is transported into the middle of nowhere, the rest of the class are transported to a kingdom where they can learn and develop their skills as future heroes. The protagonist, Yuichi, is overweight, has little self-confidence, and got bullied by the people in his school. Him being transported into the wild by himself made his integration into the fantasy world hard. However, after finding some fruit that the monkeys have gathered, he decides to steal them and eat them. Later he finds out that those were fruits of evolution after he transforms into a better version of a human, whatever that actually means. Look, the parts I'm describing to you are actually fine. In reality, most of the first season is actually okay, not the best, but it's fine. My problem with the whole show is actually in the second season. Throughout the first season, the protagonist becomes more OP and slowly collects girls for his harem, classic isekai style. In the second season, the protagonist becomes a teacher at the school where all his classmates were transported to become heroes. In reality, they were training these heroes to be sold off to a different kingdom. This is why they had slave collars put onto them so that they would follow any commands given. Throughout most of the story, none of them even know about this, and Yuichi just removes them before anyone finds out, besides one person, which is actually part of his harem as well. But the biggest problem I had with the whole season was how unserious it is about itself. There's an insane amount of jokes and references that were forced into the story. Overall, the drop in quality of this season compared to the previous one made the whole show extremely hard to enjoy, besides the fact that the first season was just a basic harem isekai anyway. At the very end of the last season, Juichi faces off against the main villain. At the very end of the fight, as Juichi is about to lose, he has a random power-up and defeats the villain with the power of love. This is the biggest example of how the show just makes a joke out of itself. But hey, I'm gonna give you some more examples because we need to really rub it in, don't we? So here are some more for your enjoyment.
Is this for real? You're already dead. Would the kids at home even get that?
Ask your mother or father, kiddos.
Yeah, oh yeah. Water, 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 magica.
At number 2, we have Uncle from Another World. I'm sure there are some people that enjoyed Uncle from Another World, but I personally hated it. It relies on its jokes to the point it becomes hard to watch. The story is about an uncle that has come back from being transported into another world. His opinion of this fantasy world is terrible because of how he was treated. Whenever anybody in this world saw him, they instantly assumed he's a monster, as everybody else in that world is designed to look extremely attractive. Rather than us seeing the show from his perspective the whole time, the story is based 50% in reality after his return and 50% in visions of the other world he's shown to his grandson and his grandson's romantic interest. The grandson and his friend are designed to be like the viewer, questioning the behavior of the uncle the whole time in both reality and fantasy. The best way I can explain this is that after the joke gets told and you react, the grandson will normally react in the same way. This kept on giving me the "this is the joke, do you get it?" impression, and this happens all the time throughout the show. The animation and the art style are very good actually. The parts that aren't, the slice of life elements are actually entertaining. However, the other half of the show made me frustrated. There are also moments that even the fantasy parts get annoying, as the uncle is just a joke the whole time. He's written to be extremely ignorant in every aspect, but he has cool and OP abilities with great animation that can become entertaining. But the writing of the characters and the way that the story is told kills the show for me. If you enjoyed this anime, please leave a comment why, because I'm actually curious why and how you might have enjoyed it. I know that enjoyment is subjective, so I'm curious why my opinion would be different from yours. Number 1. Working for God in a Godless World is not only the worst isekai I've watched, it's the second worst anime I've watched. I've watched a lot of anime and isekai, however this show is fully off the rails. The story starts with the protagonist being sacrificed by his father because of a cult his father is in charge of. After the protagonist dies, he's transported naked into a world where there are no gods or knowledge of them, as that's what he wanted for his final wish. As he wakes up, he realizes that a girl is studying his pickle rick. This is because intercourse has been forbidden in this world to create controlled population. As the show goes on, the protagonist realizes that the city he's in is actually a group of outcasts because they still have emotions. They're considered defects because they are still scared to die. This whole control over the people was originally designed by the king. After his friends get selected to be sacrificed, the protagonist goes to save them. However, he's more or less killed. As he's about to die, he summons a god because of his prayer. More or less, he begs for a god to save him and his friends. After this, they get out and later find out that the king's actually dead. At this point, the only thing that's left are the archons that the king created to control the humans. These archons have godlike powers because of technology, however they can't destroy the kingdom themselves because of restrictions the king placed on them. After the protagonist destroys the computer that's operating everything the king left behind, we get introduced to the idea of followers. The more people believe in someone, the more powerful they become. I'm not 100% sure if this applies for normal humans, but what I've seen in the show implies that it does work for anyone. After a little while, the previous archons decide to try and gain power in their own ways to take control. I'm not sure why, but they just all decide to get stronger, but honestly none of them have very good reasons besides the last one, and that one's just crazy in my opinion. I've skipped a lot, mainly because the show is an absolute mess and I can't be bothered to get into the intricacies of it. Let's get onto the big problems. The animation is absolute shit. The writing is terrible and the show is just a huge thirst trap. I don't mind ecchi anime, but the animation is bad and a lot of the ecchi elements are obscure kinks. Just as an example, here's some of the really bad animation that the show has. I'm sure you've already seen it somewhere at this point.
Give it a rest.
Oh shit! What is that?
Life's sure been good. Yeah. Utama's the best thing that's ever happened to me. This thing is amazing! A zillion times faster than doing it by hand! I'm going to be able to harvest it all!
Connects to a much larger body. You so stay with me! I'm by your side and I'll make sure you're okay! You're not taking him!
I could keep on listing things that make this show terrible, reasons why you shouldn't watch it, and just bad things about it. But honestly, I think just what I've shown you alone is good enough to convince you that this show's just really bad. So, do you know some worse isekai, or do you have some isekai that you've watched and hated? Leave a comment and we can have a discussion about it. This video is a little different than usual, so if you liked it, make sure to sub and like so we know to make more like it. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day and I'll see you in the next video.